You are what you seek to be already. The paradox is that you're both whole and in need of healing.
Hello again, and a warm welcome back to In Search of 42. My name is, of course, Felix Becker, and I am your very own success coach on this journey we call life. This week, I am excited to share with you my conversation with Cheryl Lee. Cheryl is an absolutely wonderful human being, and she embodies the true essence of what it means to be a life coach. What exactly all that means, you will, of course, find out in our conversation together. But in the meantime, please be sure to like, rate, and review. Share this episode with your friends because it helps me reach more people. And the more people we can reach, the more people we can help. People who, just like you, are looking for the answer to life, the universe, and everything. If you want to work with Cheryl, I will leave her contact information in the description below. And if you want to work with me, my contact information is in the description below as well. But with all that said and done, let's get right into my conversation with Cheryl Lee. Awesome. Cheryl, so nice to see you. Thank you. Really, thank you for doing this. One of the really the principle, the idea, what I'm trying to get out of these conversations is to introduce people to you and other coaches, who they are, what they do, and how they can help other people. So let's get right into it. Who are you?
My name is Cheryl, and I run Peony Joy Coaching. It's named after my real name, which is not Cheryl. As an immigrant, I immigrated from Hong Kong when I was 3 to Guam, the little island of Guam. My real name means peony joy. In Chinese, it's the characters for the flower peony and joy/harmony. And so that's what I named my coaching business. And I now currently live in Seattle, and I am a full-time practicing life coach.
That's fantastic. So tell me a little bit more about this story. How did you? Well, let's start with this. How did you end up in Seattle?
I moved to Seattle when I was 18 to go to college, and that's been almost 18 years ago now. So I guess I'm more of a Seattleite than I am a Guamanian, which is what we call people from Guam. Or more of a Hong Konger, I guess. So yeah, it was college that brought me here. I just chose a West Coast school, and I chose Seattle because it had a little bit of everything: mountains, water, lakes. It wasn't California, therefore it would have 4 seasons. And I grew up on a tropical island, so I wanted 4 seasons. And I've been happy here since, minus 4 years of living abroad. Yeah.
Yeah. So, uh, were you born in Hong Kong, or are you from Hong Kong heritage and born in Guam?
Born in Hong Kong. Yeah,
So
and I
then,
moved to Guam when I was 3.
so what precipitated that move? How did your family, or what made your family move from Hong Kong to Guam, which is this
My
tiny
father's
little island?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Guam is only about 4.5 hours away by flight, from Hong Kong. Guam is in the middle of the Pacific, in the middle of nowhere. It's part of the Mariana Islands. And to show you really how in the middle of nowhere it is, I mean, it's 8 hours by flight from Hawaii. And Hawaii is already 5 hours from the West Coast. So it's quite in the middle of nowhere. But we moved to Guam because my dad's job transferred him there. So it was a chance for a Hong Kong family to immigrate. And so that's what we did when I was 3 years old. Yeah.
That's so exciting. So, I have some similar background. We moved from Germany to the United States when I was 15. That's why I'm kind of curious about like all these moves that people make, and what precipitated the moves. Like, what was the motivation? What were you looking for? Right? So, do you feel like your identity comes more from Guam, which is really, like that Pacific Island feel, or more from Hong Kong, which, definitely more Asian, although Guam has a lot of Asian influence as well.
I think I identify as both. I often say that I'm from Guam by way of Hong Kong, or perhaps from Hong Kong by way of Guam. I mean, you grow up shuttling back and forth between the two. Every summer and every Christmas break, I would spend on in Hong Kong. So, did I grow up on Guam? Absolutely, most of the time. And the other parts of the year, 2 to 3 months out of the year, I'd be in Hong Kong. And so I consider myself culturally um, Hong Konger and Guamanian. But the more that you spend time in stateside, you are part of more stateside culture. So it really depends on where you are and who you spend your time with. And I'm sure I mean, who you surround yourself with. You can choose to surround yourself with plenty of islanders here stateside. I mean, there's plenty of Hawaiians or Hawaiian people here in Seattle or in California, or, a lot of people from the Pacific here in the West Coast, especially, but all over the US. And so if you spend your time just hanging out with certain groups of people, then you'll find yourself more culturally attached to that. But I have a wide variety of friends from everywhere. But living in Seattle, you become a mix, a nice mix of all of it. I have my friends and islanders from Guam. I have Chinese friends that are connected to Hong Kong. And then I have, people from everywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, no, that's so awesome. So I guess I'm kind of curious. So Guam, I was in the Air Force, so I know there's a air base out there. I've never been to Guam myself, but indirectly from the people that have been there, I would say Guam is a bit of an outlier. Yes, it's part of the United States indirectly, but it has a lot more of that Pacific Island and Asian influence than it truly does of the stateside American influence that we stereotypically think of. So I could see how the connection between Hong Kong and Guam comes about. What made you then want to leave that space that's probably more closely tied to your cultural heritage than stateside USA? What made you want to leave that to come to Washington for college?
There's only one university on Guam, and that's University of Guam. If you want to study marine biology, that is the place to go. I wouldn't study marine biology anywhere else, but I didn't want to study marine biology, even though it's a lovely subject and I have pure appreciation for all things marine biology. And I'm a certified, open scuba diver. But stateside, I mean, why does anyone leave Hawaii to go to stateside when Hawaii is gorgeous and awesome? There's just more opportunity stateside. Yes, I grew up on a U.S. territory. There's your, without getting too political, modern colonization, representation, no representation without taxation, or taxation without representation, I should say. Uh, but for the opportunities that stateside affords, I mean, you have a plethora of job opportunities that Guam, it's too small to have those job opportunities. There's majority, as you've noticed being in the Air Force before, there's a majority, I wouldn't say majority actually, there's a huge military base there. So there's that employment. And then there's tourism as an industry. Tourism is the main industry of Guam, and rightly so, similar to Hawaii, where you have Koreans and Japanese and Chinese and everyone from all over Asia coming to Guam because it's the closest place they can get to that's considered the part of America, right? So they'd go there for their honeymoon or go there for a family visit. But to answer that question of why Seattle or why move to stateside, it's the same reason as why anyone growing up would, or entering into college, or wanting more career opportunities or expansion in their career would move to the States. There's just, you can't beat the amount of variety of jobs and industries and people that are in stateside. Um, yeah, why would anybody leave, let's say, some rural town in Idaho to go to the city? Similar reasons. Yeah. It'll always be part of my heart.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair statement. There's two things I want to say as a follow up to some of the things you said. One is coming from the University of Miami. I would say the University of Miami also has a fantastic marine biology program, although focused on Atlantic and Caribbean. oceans, which are definitely different than the Pacific Ocean, especially in the Mariana geography. Um, but the funny thing is, in during my surgical training, our department chair actually was from Hawaii, and he came stateside, just like you said, for more opportunities and to expand his own professional career. But he has since returned to Hawaii to go back home. So even though he left the islands, he went back to the islands, and I think he's happier than ever back in the sunshine and the tropical beaches of Hawaii. So I could see that. So, but coming back to you, what were you studying then in college? You came to Washington, and what did you study?
At first I chose journalism strictly, but I switched over to communication. I mean, in high school, I worked for the local paper, the only newspaper on Guam, the Pacific Daily News at the time. But I switched over because I just wanted a wider net. I didn't want to be pigeonholed into just any sort of journalistic endeavor. But I've always been a strong reader and strong writer. And so communication became it, communication slash PR slash journalism, under that entire umbrella. And I eventually did a lot of marketing internships in college and worked in a Fortune 500 company to do communication internally for them. So reading and writing in the humanities has always been a forte for me. And then later, after college, I moved to Japan for 3 years and became an English teacher there. Um, I was already an English teacher moving there, but I taught in three rural secondary schools in the southern island of Kyushu in Japan. And I've always wanted to be a teacher as a little kid. But then realizing that I wanted to veer away from the corporate route for a little bit and become a teacher just to see if that is a dream that was fulfilling. And it turns out, and my mom is a kindergarten teacher, it turns out that it runs in my genes. I'm good at it. I like it. It's fulfilling. I have all the necessary components of being a great teacher and humanities at that. It's been really fun being a teacher. Although being a teacher these days, it's not easy with the political atmosphere, with certain parents of students perhaps having trouble knowing their role. And then that's when I became a coach. Last year in 2023, I became a full time coach and temporarily, or maybe permanently, I don't know, left coaching, left teaching in order to really maximize the impact that I have on people one on one and in small groups, well beyond the classroom container of, let's teach you how to write a fantastic essay. Let's teach you language arts. Let's teach you grammar and writing. Let's teach you everything in the content and the curriculum. And all of that is necessary for us to know and learn and grow as human beings, humanities, right? A very necessary part of learning. But even humanities couldn't quite contain all the juicy stuff that I really love diving into that coaching can contain. Hence, I became a coach.
Yeah, no, I love that. Your experience with the educational system is definitely something that is mirrored by many people. My girlfriend is a middle school counselor, and so I hear from her all the tragedies that are happening with students in their homes. And just a few weeks ago, we had Giovanna May Reeson, who's also a fellow Lumia life coach. She Yeah, so Giovanna was an English teacher, became a principal here in Texas. Now is teaching English abroad in Brunei, and she also is a scuba diver. So that's so cool. Maybe you guys should go and like dive trips together or something. That'd be so cool. Like, yeah,
Ivana and I met in another coaching container separately, even outside of Lumia. So yeah, I know her, and yeah, very very inspired by her as well, taking her journey abroad as she's always dreamt. She's always dreamt of doing that, and I did
right.
that in Japan. Hmm.
Yeah. No, that's so cool. That's really amazing. So I want to get back before we get to the coaching aspect. The one thing that I found in talking with all of these coaches is there's always been some life altering event, right? Something that changed in your life where you just got so fed up with something, or you had some big problem to solve that made you become a coach. And I think we glanced over your corporate career there a little bit. So tell me a little bit about what your experience was like in the corporate world and what ultimately made you decide to leave that.
Long story short, I didn't want to be a part of an organization that didn't have an impact on the world in the way that I most saw as positive. Without being too crass about it, I mean, there are certain organizations, and it's not that we don't need or can't have those organizations in society. Absolutely, they're valuable and they provide something for people. But I didn't want to be part of um, a wheel in the cog or a cog in the wheel of a machine wherein their mission didn't really have anything to do with making change in the world, impacting people's lives, doing good. And so that was really the main impetus, was all the money that I was making or would be making, which would have been plentiful by now, all the ways in which I was finding fulfillment. It turns out it wasn't in that corporate environment that was very profit driven. Not that there's anything wrong with profit, anything. We need profits to keep certain elements of society going. But I just felt like I was part of a mass machine that didn't really make any meaningful human to human connection in my day to day life, or didn't give me an opportunity to do that. And so it made more sense for me to transition to something else, regardless, whether it be teaching or coaching, so that I could have that impact on people, or so that I could do more work that would have a greater impact on a micro level than it would be even at a macro level if I was part of an organization that was doing that.
Yeah, no, that resonates so strongly with me. That's one of the big reasons I left medicine, because I wasn't actually helping patients. All I was doing was driving profits into the systems and the insurance companies. But what was expected of me was to create documentation so that patients can get billed. But I didn't get to spend the time that the patients really deserve and desire to truly help them. And so that's one of the things that really burnt me out on my medical career, my bedside medical career, was just really not being able to truly help people because it was profits over patients. So that resonates so deeply with me. So coming back to your coaching then. So how did you find coaching?
Well, speaking of profit over people, you'd be surprised, or maybe perhaps not surprised, both you and listeners, to know that school districts, despite their noble cause, despite their very noble mission and vision and values, they're still political organizations at the end of the day, or they can be, depending on who is at the top. And I just found that there were barriers in which I couldn't quite make that impact either. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot more impact within a classroom setting or a school setting that I could have than in a corporate setting, in that way of driving wonderful, amazing, life giving, love giving ideas for a large group of people, and younger people at that, but people who are going to take those lessons out into the real world and be shaped by it. And we've all been shaped by teachers in our lives, especially in secondary, middle, and high school, when you really start to become an adult and become into your own and grow up. So that impact within the classroom setting, was and still is very profound. The reason why I wanted to at least try coaching was because, yes, under that umbrella of the district setting, where I had certain standards and objectives to achieve, I had certain criterias and guidelines to fall under or to work within, and I couldn't cross those boundaries. Um, I didn't have much time or energy from the 40-hour week job to then devote to the things that I really cared about, which is creating that relationship between myself and the students, really expanding on that relationship in a safe space, in a nurturing space, so that I can actually help them with the real problems that they're having. And these are real life problems that any kid would have, relational, spiritual, and spiritual not in the religious sense, but internally. They're struggling with a lot of socio emotional issues. And short of becoming a counselor at schools, which, again, sadly, because of the system, counselors just do a lot more. Let's register you for classes and let's take care of logistics, than they do have time to help support a student's well being. There's just not enough counselors in any schools to do that for all students or the students who really need it. And so the way forward was coaching, to become my own coach and to open my own practice the way I see fit to serve students and adults in the way that best served me, choosing modalities that best resonated with me when I had my spiritual awakening, you can call it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're so right. Like I said, my girlfriend is a school counselor, so I see sort of the behind the curtain side of things, with the politicalization of the system, the lack of resources, even in her specific school district. I would say the community is very economically disadvantaged, and the households are very much broken, and that's really putting it mildly. So, you're right. School, but part of the problem, I think, too, is and this is something I've said for years now, is if we gave the Department of Education the same funding that we do the Department of Defense, things would look very differently. So they're really trying to do an incredible amount of work with very limited resources. And what's really scary for me, though, is that's our next generation. That's our future. That's what we're trying to raise. That's where our country is becoming, and that's kind of a scary thought, in many ways. But I'm still curious. How did you actually discover the field of coaching? Because there's very few people who go to Google and say, what's a coach? Where can I find a coach? Right? What's the best life coach for me? There's very few people who search for those things, specifically, because a lot of people, frankly, don't even know what coaches do, which is part of the reason I have this podcast, to try to showcase who these people are, what they do, and how they can help. So, how did you find coaching, the field, the discipline?
I really don't actually remember. That is how mysterious it is. However, I can tell you that, and this is a guiding philosophy anyway for not just my coaching practice, but for me in life. Um, and one of my core principles within coaching. Um, I believe I just followed the breadcrumbs of the universe, like Hansel and Gretel, or the trail markers. When the ground is paved with snow and you can't quite see the trail, whatever metaphor we want to use, I just followed whatever it is that intuitively guided me. I think I, of course, saw Lumia, the school that which we all graduated from, like through the internet, I'm sure, or maybe through John Kim, the founder, through his Instagram. But it was further research into what coaching is and what coaching isn't, that it became even more apparent that this is a way forward that is unique and different. It's not therapy, it's not consulting. and and it is just as empowering as the way any teacher in any person's life, you ask anybody on the planet, have you ever had one teacher, at least in your life, that's truly inspired you or changed you on some level? Their answer is yes. So it was very similar to that, where you see all the successful or powerful people in the world in that classic sense. They all have private coaches or personal coaches, whether it's in sports or in life. And so coaching became that umbrella in which I thought I could do that personal development work in myself, And regardless if I ever made a penny from it, I would have at least taken that risk that I would regret not taking, because the job is always there. There's plenty of teaching jobs. There's plenty of school districts. There's plenty of that opportunity always readily available. But for the same reason that I chose to take a risk and leave the corporate world for Japan and have an adventure essentially for 3 years, that will forever remain with me, and irrevocably changed who I am, or rather helped me return to who I really am, those 3 years in Japan. Maybe perhaps the same reason that I took a risk, so to speak, to leave teaching to become a coach was because I knew intuitively, intrinsically, that there was something there that was for me. And so I followed the breadcrumbs, and now here we are. And I am still forever changed by coaching myself personally, not even in my career. Personally, I've been changed by coaching.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. How has coaching impacted your life? How is it different now that you've had coaching yourself?
Having gone to therapy, and I think a lot of people have, it really was profoundly impactful that coaching is not therapy. I think that if a therapist is really good, they would have coaching training. A really good therapist would also be a great coach. Yeah. And so, barring becoming a therapist itself, and I didn't want to get another graduate degree, coaching has allowed me to do a kind of therapy without it being classically clinical therapy. It was therapy on the soul, right? Not therapy even on my socio-emotional well-being or my mental well-being, but it was therapy for the soul, because within the coaching setting, I was being asked questions that allowed me to find the answer within myself for all the questions that I had for myself, whether it be life direction, whether it be how can I work through this internal problem that I have, this barrier to a goal, this limiting belief. And so coaching is so powerful in that it is present focused and forward facing. I don't have to mind the past. I don't have to keep going back to past mistakes or how I could have done better, or all the logistics and narrative that sits there. None of that actually, it's helpful to know so that we know where to begin, but none of that actually was propelling me to move forward, or to even accept who I am in the present. And so much of moving forward requires that acceptance of the present. And so it was really discovering really subtle layers of things like self criticism that I had thought I had healed or worked through, healing subtle layers of elements within myself that did come from my past that no longer serves me now or in the future, and being able to discard it. Yeah, so coaching really allows me to find that powerful answer within myself without needing the clinical setting of therapy. However, because coaches are, well, we're an unregulated field, right? For better or for worse, but there's so much good from it, because any coach can go and get some training in, let's say, a somatic modality, or get some training in certain techniques or certain ways of asking questions, or certain ways of just touching within that human connection in order to really help the client and serve the client. Whereas a traditional psychotherapist or a counselor, very much regulated and contained within a very ethical but narrow silo that they can draw from. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that resonates so deeply with me. I mean, I have depression. I've been through therapy countless number of times, and the biggest problem I always had with therapy was, can we please stop talking about my mother? My past is my past. I can't change anything about that. What I'm trying to figure out is, what can I do today to create a better tomorrow for myself? And therapy was just never able to do that for me. So when I finally discovered coaching for myself, the same thing happened, right? Light bulbs went off, and I went, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for all these years from my life. And my personal growth just absolutely accelerated as a result of that. So yeah, no, I have very similar experience as you with both therapy and then ultimately coaching, which left me then to decide that's what I should do, right? To help other people have that similar experience through coaching to improve their lives and find a better path forward than whatever journey they're on right now. So, knowing all that, how do you help people? Who are your ideal clients right now? What's your practice like?
Well, one of the most impactful ways that I've been helped is actually by getting training, and this was self-selected, self-voluntary. Again, through following the breadcrumbs of the universe, I was led to a container that taught psycho-emotional spiritual technology. And that sounds really cuckoo and weird, but these techniques and protocols are based off of a Yugoslavian psychologist named Zivorad Savlinsky, who pioneered this set of tools based on, you know, however many decades of research and study and practice within the self-help or self-development area of the industry. He harnessed all the things that worked within elements like EFT, which is tapping, EMDR, all of these acronyms, right? These modalities that are in the clinical setting for a therapist, and he distilled them into powerful processes, and he called them deep PEAT. PEAT standing for PEAT, primordial energy activation and transcendence, which is a cuckoo set of words. I'll call it cuckoo because it's so weird and strange sounding. But th- harnessing those methods, those protocols has been intrinsic for me to do that internal work, because what that modality does, it simply allows me as the facilitator to ask the processee or the client questions that help them just become aware of what they have internally, subconsciously, in body sensations, in imagery, in thoughts, and in emotions. Those are the four elements in which a human makes connections and makes awareness in the world. And through asking those powerful questions, I'm not a therapist, right? I'm not a psychologist. I am not placing any evaluative element on what is being said. I'm not doing any assessment. I'm not guiding them to any sort of specific answer or solving of the answer, or solution, because I am not that person. However, as a coach, when I ask those questions and when I hear their responses, I then can ask other specific questions relating to their body sensations, their imagery, their thoughts, and their emotions, so that eventually the end goal is to integrate that emotional charge that they have and to integrate the polarities within their dueling identities within that is causing them to be in that um, looping emotional state. And so that's been a very powerful modality that I've harnessed as a coach, not only to help myself and having my colleagues in that container process me. Um, I've basically gotten through weeks and months of what would have needed to take place in therapy, but all in a short amount of time and all ethically within the coaching container without it being needed to be done by a licensed therapist. They're not doing anything that a therapist should do. They're simply asking very powerful questions on along those lines so that we can harness what actually works within the internal spirit. And they call it a spirit technology, spiritual technology, because at the end of the day, all we're simply doing is allowing that person to return to the oneness within them. And as soon as you touch that oneness, you understand intrinsically, not here, but here, which is a very different thing. Understanding here that I actually have a choice when it comes to facing that particular problem. I can either be this identity or this identity. But on a conscious level and on a day to day level, we often have trouble going back and forth between identities that do serve us. When it rains, we put on a raincoat and we go outside, and it really serves to protect us. But when it's not raining and it's very hot and it's very sunny, often a lot of what we do in life is we keep that coat and we say, I really want to keep this because it still serves me. And I'm conditioned to believe that it serves me when it just no longer is appropriate for that context. Yeah. So that's it in a nutshell, is a very powerful, technically it is a psycho-emotional processing technique or a set of techniques or protocols, but at the end of the day it's spiritual technology, because all it is doing is allowing us to return to the oneness, to the divine, to the truest us inside us, that knows that it's divinely loved or whole, that it's not broken, and that we are more powerful than whatever circumstance we find ourselves in.
That's fascinating. No, that's really cool. It's really the first time that I've heard about this particular technique or approach. So, um, yeah, I guess my question to you though is, uh, who are the people that should reach out to you? Like, what problems do they have? Where are they at in their life? Like, who should reach out to you when listening to this and be like, "Oh, this sounds really intriguing. I wonder if Cheryl can help me." Like, who are these people?
If you or anyone has ever had a circumstance that triggers a certain emotional response, it can be something as minor, we'll call it as minor as frustration, annoyance, all the way up that emotional scale of we're getting to anger, we're getting to resentment, we're getting to huge amounts of judgment, we're getting to a plethora of all of that combined, layers and layers like an onion. If you or anyone out there who has ever been finding themselves caught up in it for more than an hour a day, then you can come find me. If it's been bothering you and negatively impacting your life in some way, even if on the outside it doesn't seem like it, and for all of us in the world, we all have something on our hearts right now that is bothering us, right? No one out there, whether it's Bill Gates or me and you, is living life with absolutely nothing that is on my heart, and it's been on my heart for more than a day. It's a bit bothersome. And on a bigger level, beyond bothersome, maybe something happened, something huge, something cataclysmic, something tragic happened, a car accident, a huge fight that really created so much emotional turmoil, and you're caught in that emotional turmoil and you find yourself a bit stuck in it. You can't get out of it. But for comparison's sake, if there's a pebble in your shoe, you can walk just fine with that pebble in your shoe. You can even run, you can do jumping jacks, you can do all kinds of things. But behind the scenes, you're quite aware every now and then, maybe not every moment of every day, there's a pebble in my shoe, and I want to do something about it. I want to dissolve that pebble. Or something as big as, yeah, I'm carrying a giant boulder on my shoulders right now, and I need to take care of this. I don't want to be trapped by it anymore. I don't want to be looping in it anymore. And so that's essentially anybody. But for anybody who wants to receive a complimentary session to try out this technology, and just to see if it even works for you, I welcome that. I offer a first complimentary session just so people have an idea of, well, what is this voodoo? It's not any voodoo. It just feels like a guided meditation, really. The only caveat is you got to just be honest with what you're saying out loud, because the goal is to get out every content within you that is subconscious into the conscious. And in that way, we dissolve and integrate that emotional charge. And there's some identity work in there as well, but it's nothing more complex than a guided meditation. Yeah, so that's the kind of client that I would be looking for, who is willing to do the work also. That would be most appropriate for me. Yeah.
And that last part is so important, right? I mean, as coaches, we can help so many people, but we're not here to do the work for you. So anybody who's coming to a coach has to be willing to put in the work, and I think that's one of the important pieces that really leads to a good coaching relationship. But it's also probably one of the limiting factors, because to say I'm going to put in that hard work is takes some effort, right? I mean, that's definitely a limiting factor for a lot of people. Like, I know I should, but I don't really want to, right? So that's definitely a limiting factor. So let me ask you a few questions to sprinkle some more light on who you are from my simple networking toolbook, just to get away from the coaching side here for a second. With all your travels that you've already been on, what is a place you haven't been to yet but really want to visit?
I would love to visit Morocco, Turkey, Egypt, the Far East or the Middle East. I've been to 30 some countries, but have yet to go to that area of the world and see all the amazing colors and sights and senses of that area. Morocco is a beautiful country. I had a trip planned there in December of 2021, and the government, a week before our flight was to take place, shut down the entire country, and so I couldn't do that two week road trip around the country. So I think that comes to mind the most, but there are so many places to explore, even right here in the continental United States, that I haven't been to. There's some great national parks that is right in the backyard, so to speak. But I'm lucky enough to live in Seattle, where we have three national parks, and it's just a wondrous, most heavenly and beautiful place to live. Um,
That's fantastic. I love
Travel
that.
is, yeah.
I guess my follow up question then is also from the book. So you come from Guam, you want to go to Morocco, hot, you're warmer climates, but you're in Seattle, which is more on the cooler side. So would you rather take a cold shower on a hot day or a warm bath on a cold day?
Um, oh gosh, they both can be equally amazing. um, I think I would rather take a warm bath on a cold day. I often find myself a little bit colder than I'd like, or maybe my constitution or my blood runs colder. So taking a warm, or better yet, a hot bath. I used to live in the onsen, or the hot springs capital of Japan, a town called Beppu in Kyushu. And that was amazing to have just hundreds and hundreds of hot springs in one's backyard, literally. And so hot water would be very nice, especially when it's cold.
Yeah, that sounds lovely. I'm drawn to the warmer things of life as well, so I can totally relate. All right, this last question for me is the weirdest question I've ever asked, but it's also my favorite as a result of that. So, would you rather have a cat that barks or a dog that meows?
Cat that barks or a dog that meows. Um, oh gosh, I don't know.
I know it's a tough
What a
question.
unique question. I think you have your previous guests on the podcast ask the next question for the next guest, right?
Absolutely, that's coming up too. Yes.
um, I'd I'd go with neither. Only because I want to honor honor the originality of what cats bring to the table and what dogs bring, and they are both very uniquely them. There is overlap, obviously. They're both animals, they're both pets, but I find that the people who own cats or dogs, they have certain dispositions that are not quite that are a bit more mutually exclusive. I think most people are either a cat person or more of a dog person. And then, of course, there are those that don't mind either and they have both. But it's more fascinating to me to consider what those elements are than to ask if a cat could bark. I've seen cats do their version of barking. I mean, a hiss can be just as terrifying as a really, really angry bark. A very, very strong and angry hiss can be equally chilling as an angry bark. But I guess it would be interesting to see a dog meow.
you
They
know
meow in their own way. They whine and they make sounds that it's not a bark. It's a very soft sound that they make, and they can communicate in a non-barking way. So neither and both at the same time.
No, but I love the perspective of wanting to honor the originality of each species. I think that's a very unique perspective. I don't think anybody's answered the question that way before, so I think I love that. I truly do. But yeah, you mentioned every guest gets to ask the next guest a question. So here's your question from Dave Gieselman, and this is an interesting question. Uh, Really, his question is sort of somewhat vague, but whatever is important to you right now in your life, why is it important? Why is this so important to you? Whatever that is, right? Whatever is important in your life right now.
And that's a great question from him. And he must very well know what a powerful coaching question is. Because what is important is not only ethically standardized within ICF standards or International Coaching Federation standards, but knowing the importance of what you're doing or the significance of it is so essential and crucial for moving forward, knowing your why. What is most important to me right now is my continued journey in my personal development, in Cheryl's personal development, not just in others. I know that I can only best serve people if I take myself to the highest place that I can go, and that highest place doesn't have a particular destination. In fact, there is no destination. It's just all a continuing journey. So that is very important to me now in really honing my own sense of self, my own divinity within, my own spiritual path. And in doing so, all things external will fall into place. Hopefully, we do both simultaneously. We take care of the stuff on the outside as well as simultaneously taking care of stuff on the inside. But the outside won't change permanently, or the outside won't reach true success without the internal also aligning with it. And so internal development is most important. And the why is because I know that I can't even have that impact on others, or reach the whatever highest stratospheres of my own life externally without taking care of that alignment within.
Right? No, that is so true. Truly, such wisdom that you have there. That's fantastic. Well, listen, you knew this was coming, so it's your turn to ask the next guest any question you like.
That question would be, in what area of life can you take the opportunity to shift from a fear-based mindset to a love or abundance-based mindset? It's
I
a
love that.
what question. It is a closed answer. But again, the question is, in what area of life, in what topic area, realm of life currently, can you or would you want to take the opportunity to shift from a fear-based mindset to a love-based mindset? And we're talking about not romantic love, but unconditional love. Yeah.
Right. No, no, I totally get that. I love that question. That's fantastic. That's really cool. Awesome. Well, Cheryl, where can people reach out to you? How can they connect with you if they want to work with you?
They can go to my website, www.peony, like the flower, joy, Joy, coaching.com. I offer complimentary sessions to anyone who would like to experience that spiritual technology, or just forget all those things that we said. If you are riled up over something, anything at all, big or small, if you find yourself having a frustration that just sort of won't go away, and you really want to change who you are in the face of the situation, because we know we can't change the situation itself. We don't have the power to, let's say, magically fix your financial issues if you only have a certain amount of money in the bank, let's say, or the way that your mother-in-law might speak, using some classic stereotypical problems here. But if you find yourself looping in any emotional state, it can be something as low on the totem pole of frustrations, or emotions, or it can be something as big as some really heavier stuff. Even in just one session, if the client is willing, we can clear out a lot of that emotional charge so that the client is integrated within their identity and in their emotions, so that not that the circumstance changes or the problem changes, but who they are in the face of that circumstance or problem does change. Yeah. So feel free to reach out to me anytime through my website. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll make sure the link is in the description below so anybody can find that more easily in case they can't spell, and they can connect with you more easily. Thanks for being here. Any final words from you to the world?
Thank you, Felix, for having me. It's been a wonderful hour. And final thoughts to the world is just you are what you seek to be already. The paradox is that you're both whole and in need of healing. You're both on your path and you need some support in your path. And so understanding that paradox, and saying it out loud, and reading it and having someone tell you out loud, it only goes to here. But when it does trickle down here and you experience that paradox of the both and, not an either or, magic happens in your life. So I encourage you all to seek living in that paradox yourself, having both the self-discipline and the self-compassion to continue on in your journey, and hopefully in a love-based mindset way and not a fear-based one. Yeah, that's it.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, thank you again for being here. Thank you for doing this. It's been an absolutely mind-blowing conversation, and thank you again. Truly amazing.
Thank you, Felix. Thank you.
All right, I really hope you enjoyed that. The questions that I asked towards the end are from my new book, The S.I.M.P.L.E Networking Tool. It's a great book that redefines how we network. It's all about who someone is and not what they are. So if you want to get your own book, it's available on Amazon. If you want to learn more, there's videos about it here on YouTube. So you can check out this amazing new social science experiment. I'm so excited for it. If you do get a book and you do start your own, please let me know how it goes and what your experience is like. I'm working on the second edition and I want to make it the best one yet. So be sure to tag me, let me know how it goes. Thanks for watching.